So, a very good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another fireside chat of With Purpose session. Today, I am Aishwarya Saran, your host for this session. And today, we have a very special guest with us who has come here to share her views as well as her experience with us. So, a little about the speaker of the day. We have Anjali Janeja Amar with us, who is a technology trailblazer with 25 years of experience of leadership in cybersecurity, cloud solutions, and digital transformation. As a VP and country head for India and SARC at Cloudflare, she drives innovation, making internet faster, safer, and more reliable for the businesses. That's not only it, she's also a very passionate advocate of women in tech, and she mentors and empowers future women. And she comes here with a very unique perspective, believing that women should uplift each other rather than, being against each other. And they don't just break barriers, they create new paths. So, Anjali, we are absolutely honored to have you with us today. And I can see that our audience is really excited to know more about you. So, can you please tell us a little more about yourself?
Thank you so much, Aishwarya. Thank you so much. Good afternoon to everybody. And I feel absolutely happy that I am joining this discussion with you today. As you rightly said, I am a technologist, a salesperson who's been in the industry for almost 25 plus years. I have two young kids who are in college, both of them. One is doing his engineering in BITS Pilani. The other one is doing fashion design from the US. My husband works with SAP, again into technology. So we are a family of technologists at home, except for my daughter who's into fashion. Work it has been my passion to not just be good in sales, but develop and work towards relationship with my clients, with my vendors, with my partners, and with customers, all of them. And I think God has been kind. The journey has been really good for last 25 plus years. And I look forward to having an absolutely amazing conversation with you and sharing some insights from my journey, professional and personal both.
Absolutely, Anjali, and we can't wait to hear more about it. And since we are here talking about your journey, we can see that you have had an incredible journey in tech, as you also correctly pointed out, which has been spanning across different roles, industries, and you have also worked with industry giants like IBM, Microsoft, Verizon, Tableau, and now with Cloudflare. So, what inspired you to explore such a diverse range of opportunities rather than specializing into one area?
A very, very valid question, I must say. See, my journey across IBM, Microsoft, Verizon, Tableau, now Cloudflare has really been driven by my deep curiosity and a desire to constantly challenge myself. Rather than specializing in just one area, I think I've always been drawn to opportunities which would give me a chance to learn, to adapt, and to make an impact. Impact in the society and impact in the lives and business lives of people. At IBM, leading the media and entertainment team, that was my first big leadership role. I'm grateful to Avinash Joshi, who was my then boss and gave me that opportunity. That was a time where I built an ecosystem from the scratch. When I moved to Tableau, I got introduced to the SaaS and cloud world, which completely shifted my perspective on how technology could drive the business outcomes. Now, each transition, whether it is into cybersecurity at Cloudflare or the large-scale enterprise solutions at Microsoft or Verizon, all of them were very deliberate steps towards broadening my skill sets and staying ahead of the industry shifts. Beyond just a career growth, I've always believed it is important, very imperative that we stay relevant in the ever-changing tech landscape. Embracing the change, taking on new challenges, and mentoring others along the way have really made my journey very fulfilling.
Absolutely, Anjali, and I couldn't have agreed more. Because especially with so much happening around in tech, or in any industry per se, there's so much happening, and adapting to it is really the first step which you can take to, be at par with the curve we are in an act. And with that being said, I am sure that it wouldn't have been without your own personal challenges. So,
Right.
can you share a defining moment in your career where you faced a major challenge and how you overcame it?
There have been, see, as you said, I've spent a couple of decades in the industry. So there have been many defining moments in my life which have helped me to shape my career. But one of the most important ones was the defining moments was leading the IBM's media and entertainment industry vertical in India as the country head in 2007. Um, IBM was my dream company. I joined them in 2004 and I used to work with the telco industry vertical. Then I went on a maternity break. When I came back, I took up the challenging role of being an account executive in media. And quickly, I was elevated to be the country, head for media. And I think that was a time when for IBM, this business was completely new. There was no playbook in IBM on media. The clients were very skeptical of what IBM could deliver for them. And even the internal folks, the product guys and the SSCs and everybody who would help people to sell, because I was a salesperson and a sales leader, there was a lot of internal resistance from them to help us. Now, to overcome this, I built an ecosystem of ISVs, partners, educated the market through the CXO briefings, through industry events, and leveraged my relationships to secure very early wins. Early wins are very, very important in business. Now, instead of pushing the products from IBM, I focused on proving IBM's value through real success stories for the clients. For example, there was this client, Sony TV, where we sold the digital asset management solution to them. Now, this did not involve the products. It involved services, solutioning, everything from IBM. But most important was the fact that this was a very marquee project for Sony as well as for IBM. And as a result of Sony and many such wins like these, we turned the media and entertainment vertical of IBM into a very strong contributor for IBM, shifting the industry perception of IBM, gaining the leadership buy-in from the customers and leadership within IBM. And this experience really shaped my ability to navigate ambiguity in life, ambiguity in business. It helped me to build new businesses and drive the change. And I think these are the skills which are there with me till now, and they continue to shape me even today. Shape my, the way I, talk to customers, the way I've embraced new kind of job roles. All this experience of, IBM has really helped me do that. I can't hear you, Aishwarya. You were on mute.
Absolutely, Anjali. I can see that happening. And also, since we talked about shifting perceptions, let's get into a little tech side of it. I mean, there's so
Okay.
much as we discussed earlier as well. There's so much happening when we talk about tech. There's
Yeah.
rise of AI, cloud computing, and cybersecurity as well. So, with that being said, how do you see these technologies shaping businesses today?
Very, very relevant question, Aishwarya, because no discussion today is complete without AI coming into it, or cloud computing, or cybersecurity coming into it. And the world today is so fast paced. It is a total fast paced digital landscape, if I may say. And in this digital landscape, AI, cloud computing, cybersecurity, they are reshaping the entire business operations. They are not just helping businesses to do better, they are helping to drive efficiency into the system. They are enhancing the competitiveness of the customers, or the organizations who are embracing all of these technologies. So these technologies not just become tools for optimization, they are actually the fundamental to how any organization evolves and how they secure their digital assets. Now, that being said, AI-driven automation is really revolutionizing the workflows in any business, right? They are helping us to improve the customer interactions. They help you and enable you to, have precise data-driven decision making. Data today helps you to derive decisions very, very quickly. Businesses at all industries are leveraging AI for predictive analysis, for intelligent automation of applications, for very personalized customer experiences that you can give, customer 360, the experiences that you're giving. It also helps the organizations to scale very, very efficiently and stay ahead of the market trends. When I come to cloud computing today I think is most essential for any modern enterprise. It offers flexibility, it offers cost effectiveness, and it also offers very seamless collaboration. When you adopt a cloud solution, your business can scale operations without any extensive infrastructure investment that you might have to do in the older years. It allows you to respond to the market demands, the market trends, and also foster innovation very, very quickly. Right? Similarly, when you are adopting AI, you are adopting cloud computing, your reliance on digital has gone up. And when that happens, it amplifies the cybersecurity risk as well. Right? The integration of AI and cloud computing today has introduced a lot of new vulnerabilities into the network, into the business applications, and the overall business that you are working in. And this makes a very requirement or a need. There is a strong need for a very robust and a strong security framework that is very, very imperative. Now, I believe businesses today should proactively implement robust cybersecurity to safeguard themselves and also to safeguard their sensitive data, to prevent the cyber threats which are there. Every day you see a new cyber threat which is being introduced, and also to maintain the compliances which or regulatory, things which the government keeps introducing in India. And worldwide, compliances are there for every industry. Telco is a regulated industry, BFSI is a regulated industry. So, this really helps you to stay ahead of the curve. So, strategic adoption of AI, cloud, and cybersecurity is not just about technological advancement that you do, it is about building a business which is future ready. Companies that embrace these innovations are the companies which are able to address the challenges of the business from the market very quickly and also remain ahead of curve against competition. So that's how I think, all of these three technologies are very, very imperative, very important in today's world.
Absolutely. And there's so much happening around, as you correctly pointed out as well, around compliance. And what the digital transformation can do and what it cannot do is also a really big question mark for the people out there, especially in tech industry.
Right.
With that being said, what's one of the biggest misconception about digital transformation that companies need to overcome?
When I used to work in Microsoft a few years back, and that was the time when I heard this term digital transformation, and this is like 7-8 years back. It used to be one of the strong pillars which Microsoft used to go and advocate about for various solutions that they sold. But today, I think digital transformation has become part of every and any industry, every client. And there are many misconceptions that people have around the digital transformation. I have met customers who still believe that digital transformation is just about technology upgrade. But in reality, it's a very comprehensive strategy that involves change in processes, in culture, and mindset of the users. Whether it is your customers or your internal users, that mindset change has to happen. Implementing any new technology without aligning them to your business goals and workflows can often lead to inefficiencies more than the benefits that they can get for you. The other very widespread digital transformation myth that I have seen is that digital transformation, or DT as we call it, can happen overnight, right? Nothing happens overnight. We all know that. So many organizations, when you go and talk to them, they expect immediate results. But the transformation, any transformation, leave alone digital transformation, is a continuous journey. It requires ongoing adaptation. It requires ongoing adaptation and adoption both. It requires new learning of the different new things that you are, introducing into your system. And it also needs long-term commitment from the organization. So businesses really have to be willing to evolve as the technology and their customer expectations change. Now, a lot of people also believe that only large organizations or large businesses need digital transformation. The truth is that every business, irrespective of the size, needs digital transformation. Today, if you go out in Delhi when, it's summers are coming, you'll find those ice cream wala bhaiya standing all over, right? And you will find each of them using a phone pay, UPI. It's a digital, way of digital money, as we say. So they have adopted to that. These guys might not be very well read, but they are open to adopting new technology. And that's the digital transformation they have brought about in their business. So you have to be ready at any kind of business, big or small, to adopt digital transformation. Probably a lot of times people also believe that digital transformation is the sole responsibility of the IT team. Whereas digital transformation starts from the top, it's a top-driven thing, and it has to get adopted by everybody in the business, including your customers. So these are few myths which I have seen in my journey of sales, which customers come up with. But gradually over the years, I've also seen a mindset shift where they've realized this and they are going through digital transformation and helping their businesses grow with it.
That's a very interesting take, I must say, Anjali, because what struck the most to me is the fact that we are here not only catering to people who know how to use these technologies, we also have our audience pool or our customer target who don't know how to read or write.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, whatever trend or whatever technology which we are talking about adapting and adopting should also be in a way that when we think if a person cannot write, if they'll be able to use it or not. And that's a really intriguing thought to have, because it really changes your perspective towards things when you approach them.
In fact, I'll add this also, and I'm very proud that, every phone pay transaction that you hear, when you hear that 10 rupees has been paid, or, we've received that in Amitabh Bachchan's voice or some other voiceover, that transaction that, it is cloud computing at edge, which is powered by Cloudflare. So all of those transactions in the backend, Cloudflare is helping at the edge to PhonePe to, do that transaction and probably, have that voiceover that you hear. We are enabling that.
And I mean, that has become such a big trend, not only in terms of technology, but also in terms of, how we have adapted to the technology. Because a person maybe who cannot see or who cannot speak, still they get to know that, yes, my transaction has been done. And it has genuinely become a really big trend and rather a really transformative one. And with that being said, since we are here talking about trends, so you also pointed out that there are a lot of myths around technology which we are seeing, right?
Yeah.
So what's one technology trend that initially seemed promising, but you have become more skeptical about it over the time?
That's a very interesting one, actually. And I think over a few years, there have been a few of those. But two of those technology trends I will want to, speak out. One is the metaverse, and to some extent, probably blockchain as well. A couple of years ago, metaverse was supposed to change everything. How we work, how we socialize, and even how we shop. Big players like Meta, like Microsoft, and even a lot of banks actually jumped into it. Everybody wanted to bet on a future where we would live in a virtual world. But fast forward to today, and let's be real, it really hasn't taken off the way people expected it. Now, why it didn't happen probably could be many reasons. One, of course, the adoption just wasn't there, right? Outside of gaming, I think people did not embrace the virtual world. And I don't blame them for that. I mean, you have to have some real world. So we are still, while, we work out of home, but the idea of sitting in a digital office with avatars surrounded looked like a very cool theory, but not a practical one. Then, of course, I think there have been some hardware challenges also, because the VR sets, or they were expensive, they were clunky, they were not mainstream. I mean, I can't expect a ice cream wala bhaiya to be wearing a VR set and selling it. It's very expensive, right? The guy doesn't earn that much in a month what he would have to spend on the VR set. So, and then of course, there were no killer use cases. Beyond gaming, I didn't see any use case for metaverse till now. And the other one, which I think was a big hype, which didn't take off very well, was blockchain. And I do remember I made my own teams in Verizon and IBM actually go through massive trainings on blockchain, because we did believe that blockchain is going to be there for everything, right? But there were some, projects which were there in blockchain. Probably cryptocurrency is one big thing which is working on blockchain. But otherwise, blockchain really has not taken off the way it could have. The reason could be scalability. The reason could be energy consumption. There are a lot of challenges which it faced. Regulatory uncertainty could be one of the reasons. But yes, these two technologies looked like they would change the world, they would take over the world, but they've not really done what we expected them to do.
Absolutely. And when Metaverse came into picture, I was really excited to see what my alter ego could look like. Maybe I could have become Ashley instead of Aishwarya. But
oh yeah. But another thing I would say, that I wouldn't say that I've given up on these, because there is some potential in it. If you look at it, AR can change healthcare.
Absolutely.
Or blockchain can help in supply chain management. So there are use cases where they can be very, very good, and they should potentially be used there. But would they really change the world? I don't think that has happened.
Absolutely. And you also rightly pointed out that one of the biggest factors for that could be, there was some scalability issues maybe happening, or there was performance at stake, or maybe security at stake.
Yes.
And that also, these factorials and factors are also a very big question, or rather chunk, or are really involved in a way when we talk about cloud. So with businesses increasingly moving to the cloud, how does Cloudflare help organizations to strike the right balance between these factors, which is security, performance, and scalability?
See, as businesses are increasingly migrating to cloud, there is a definite need for them to balance security, performance, and scalability, all three of them, so that they can ensure a very seamless operation. Now, Cloudflare addresses this challenge with a very integrated approach that we have. Our approach combines robust security, high-speed performance, and scalable infrastructure, all of it. For example, let me take an example. Our web application firewall, commonly called as WAF, right? And advanced DDoS protection, they help you to mitigate cyber threats in real time without compromising on the speed, because our network is there everywhere. Okay. While our global network accelerates the content delivery, commonly called as CDN, by reducing the latency, and it also helps you to enhance the user experience. We have, in fact, more than 330 points of presence across the globe. Now, Cloudflare's scalable architecture can adapt to businesses of all sizes. It can allow the organizations to expand your digital footprint very, very securely. We are a cybersecurity company, so we allow you to expand your digital footprint in a secure manner. We help you to integrate your security and also give you a very optimized network performance. We empower the businesses to innovate confidently with our AI on the edge. so that your digital assets, they remain protected to all kinds of new threats which are coming in. So we help you to, scale up faster in a very secure manner, and help you to leverage our network, which is across 330 plus locations across the globe.
That's really interesting to know that how Cloudflare is. That's such an intriguing, and it's also intriguing I can't say much about it because it just took me aback
I think that's a
thinking
cue
about the
for you to,
impact.
yeah,
Thinking about
that's
the
also a
impact.
cue for you to learn about Cloudflare a little more.
Yes, absolutely. And what I know about Cloudflare is that it is known for its innovative approach towards cybersecurity, and you also kind of educated me towards it right now as well. So,
Yeah.
with that being said, how do you see AI and analytics enhancing Cloudflare's ability to drive smarter and rather a more data-driven business strategy?
Okay. I'll give you a very textbook answer to this. Okay.
Okay.
Because I'm not a tech person myself, but I do understand what we are doing at the back end. Now, AI and analytics are transforming our ability, Cloudflare's ability to deliver smarter, data-driven cybersecurity and network solutions. Now, AI-powered threat detection continuously analyzes, because all the data is passing through our network and it is AI-powered. So that continuously analyzes the vast data sets to identify and neutralize all the emerging cyber threats in real time. So any threat before it goes out, because the data is passing through our network, we are able to neutralize it right over there. So that helps us to minimize the risk before it can impact any of our businesses. And when I say our businesses, I mean our customers' businesses. So Cloudflare's analytic tools offer very deep visibility into web traffic patterns. It helps the organization to fine-tune all the security protocols and also optimize digital experiences that you want to give to your clients. Machine learning that we use enhances the bot management. We also have bot management that we do. It helps you to distinguish between legitimate users and the automated threats. And that's a very big challenge these days, the bot introduced threats which are there. And that helps you or ensures a very seamless access when you are trying to access your applications, because it blocks all the malicious traffic. Now, by leveraging the AI and the data-driven intelligence that our network provides, Cloudflare strengthens the security posture, it enhances the network efficiency, and it also helps the businesses of our clients to stay ahead of any cyber risk while maintaining a very high performance digital operation, if I may say. Yeah.
Absolutely. And
A little technical, but that's what we do, and we can get into more technology discussion if we have time later. Aishwarya, I can't hear you.
Yeah, so what I wanted to know is that since you correctly pointed out about customers, delivering best to the customers also is highly dependent on type of teams which we are building, right? And we can see that throughout your career journey, you have been across various leadership positions.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure most of our audience are on their way to leadership positions. And hence, your insights about what's your approach to building and scaling high performance teams, especially in industries that are constantly evolving, can be of great help for our audience. So, what do you have to say about that?
Let me think. How do I frame this answer to you? See, building and scaling high-performing teams, especially in the very fast evolving industry today, which is there, requires a mix of 2-3 things. It requires right talent, it requires continuous learning, and it requires a very strong culture, a value-driven strong culture. Now, my approach has been to build on these 3 pillars. Okay? I ensure that my teams are in a phase where they have constant learning and enablement for themselves. so that they stay ahead of the curve by investing in ongoing trainings, industry certifications. And I also try and bring in thought leaders to share insights. We partner with universities for university programs. And this I'm talking across the various, organizations that I've worked in. In some, I have leveraged the university programs. In some, I've gotten the thought leaders. And I've also co-funded some initiatives along with the industry leaders so that they could help to upskill the talent that we have in the organization. So that's the first piece that, I've really been working on. The second piece has been to recognize and introduce a healthy competition in the team, to create a culture where teams challenge each other, celebrate the wins with each other, and also get rewarded for what they bring to the table, how they're performing. So that culture really drives motivation and accountability with teams. So high performance which gets recognized and also gets rewarded is something which people typically like, and that gets them to be motivated to work better. And the third piece has been around technology innovation, technology and innovation both. So I try and encourage both personal and organizational investment in the latest tools, because technology is moving at such a fast pace. It's important that each of us keeps learning and are abreast the latest and the greatest in the technology to stay agile and also to stay ahead of the market trends. So finally, if you look at it, it is all about fostering a growth mindset in the organization and in your teams, where people feel they are empowered, where they feel they are recognized, and they are equipped by the organization, by their leaders to succeed in this ever-changing industry and in this ever-changing technology world.
Absolutely, Anjali. And how I see this is that this is diversity at its peak. Like, it's not only in terms of your employees, it's also in terms of how you are enabling them to adapt to the changes which the industry is going through. And with that being said, that whenever we talk about diversity, there's often a debate about promoting diversity without compromising business needs. So how do you strike the right balance for it?
So is the question that how do I strike a balance in innovation and diversity, or is it, can you reword the question for me?
Okay. So, since we talked about diversity, so when we talk about diversity, there are two folds to it. So one is fostering innovation while ensuring business success and stability. And second is diversity in terms of the opportunities which you give to your employees. So let's first concentrate on the first one. So how do you balance fostering innovation while ensuring business success and scalability?
Okay. So let me first look at the innovation part of it. Now, balancing innovation and business success and stability, all of it together, actually is about creating right space for both structured and out-of-box thinking, right? Because when you look at stability, at times you just want to be there and just keep learning, and then you at times you can become very complacent that, I know everything, I'm stable, and I stop learning. At the same time, when you are growing at a very fast pace, you're, investing into innovation, that at times cannot foster stability. So you have to look at both. So which means that it has to be very structured, and at the same time, it has to be very out-of-box thinking also. Now, I have really seen this play out in very different ways across my career. Now, when I was working with IBM, which was a very large process-driven organization, innovation over there was fostered through very structured R&D process. They were constantly evolving and spending money on two products, into solutions with a very well defined framework which was there. Now, in smaller organizations, and I've been working in many small organizations also, while things move very, very fast, there aren't many resources. Resources are not as abundant. So I had to take a very different approach with people so that they remained motivated and they also invested into innovation and stability. So there I focused on mentoring my teams to think very creatively. Now, whether it was designing a very innovative business model to, serve your client, or find a very unconventional solution to the customer's challenge, or probably reimagining how we engage in the market per se. So these are the things which I would ask them to do out of the box. One of the things which I felt worked very well for me was something called as intentional togetherness. So in smaller organization, and especially during COVID, where we were not meeting on a regular basis in office, I would get the people to come together in small groups called as intentional togetherness, where we would brainstorm together. We would discuss the roadblocks. We would discuss and co-create solutions for our clients. So that used to fire up the ideas, and we would listen. At least I would listen into everybody's point of view. However junior or senior, everybody had a point of view which could help us to service our clients much better. So at the end of the day, innovation is just not about technology or big breakthroughs. To me, innovation is about cultivating a mindset where people feel very empowered. They feel empowered to face any kind of challenge. They feel empowered to challenge the norm and to experiment with something different and new. And when you create that kind of an environment, I think businesses definitely succeed, and success is a natural outflow of that.
Absolutely, Anjali. And I couldn't have agreed more that, and there's one thing which you pointed out is that, empowerment is not only in terms of technology, but also at the end of the day, technology is for humans, and hence
Yes.
them being empowered and them being satisfied with what they do is what will help us to deliver better outcomes for our customers.
Absolutely.
And you also pointed out throughout your answer that there's a lot of thought diversity, there's a lot of technological diversity that's happening around it. So, which
Yeah.
brings me to the second fold of it, that there's often a debate about promoting diversity without compromising your business needs. So, how do you strike the right balance for that?
Again, a question very, very close to my heart, diversity versus the business needs. Now, that's the biggest myth I could talk about. The best performing teams that I have worked with, they are not just, they aren't just diverse or business driven. They are actually both. They are diverse and they are business driven. And I've really experienced this firsthand in my career. For me, it is not just about lowering the bar, but expanding the pool. Okay. If we keep fishing in the same waters, we'll keep catching the same kind of fish. Now, some of the most successful hires that I have made over the years were definitely not the perfect fit. They were not the perfect fit on paper, but they had the hunger. They had the will to be adaptable, and they had the potential to thrive. So I'll give you an example, and this has been with a couple of people that I've done. There have been a couple of executive assistants that I've had. I transitioned them into sales role, just because I could recognize the skills that they have, which others had overlooked. So, we could have just let those people be EAs all their life, but then I would not have got the diverse set of view that these people had. So it is all about creating a culture where people want to stick, stay, and grow. Hiring diverse talent is one of the things, but if you hire diverse people, but they do not feel valued, then again there is a challenge. So they will walk out of the door if they are not valued out there. So when different voices are truly heard in a team, in an organization, whether it is in cybersecurity or cloud or any industry, innovation will start happening. right? Because people feel valued. They have that growth mindset culture. They know that they will be heard. And when innovation happens, customers get better solutions and the business wins on both sides. So for me, really, diversity is not a nice to have thing. It is a competitive advantage which organizations have learned to leverage and use. And when that is done right, Aishwarya, it makes the businesses stronger, not weaker. So if you need strong business, you have to embrace diversity in its true form.
Definitely, Anjali. And I couldn't have agreed more. And trust me when I say this, this is something which I experience firsthand every day. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Exactly what you said is exactly what I experience every day. And I'm so thankful for the experience because it's such a good experience and it's such a good thing to have that it shouldn't be restricted to a single person. And
Right.
thank you so much for cultivating that kind of, for making the arena for your employees to, come up and ask you for what they want.
Right.
And with that being said, there's this thought that's coming across my mind
Mhm.
that I saw that you helped one of your employee transition into a salesperson. You could have simply mentored him into the job role he was, and he could have done what he could have, but you recognized something and you helped him transition into what he could have done better. So what I see it is that that's anti-mentorship. And right now, many women leaders speak about mentorship, but now
Mhm.
I am curious to know about anti-mentorship. So
Okay.
is there a specific leadership approach you observed earlier in your career that you have deliberately chosen to do opposite of? And why?
Absolutely. You've touched a raw nerve. Absolutely. And I think anybody with my kind of experience definitely would have, gone through these experiences. So, yes, there have been some leadership styles I saw very early in my career that made me think, oh my God, no, I am never going to do this. So, let me speak of a couple of them. And I'll not tell you which organization or which leaders, but let me definitely, touch on a couple of those leadership styles. I think one of the biggest one was the gatekeeper leader. That type, someone who holds on to information like it's a secret treasure, only helping a select few while letting others struggle. So there are leaders who say, I will only help these two people, not the others. Now, I saw so many talented people hit roadblocks, not because they lacked potential, but because they were not in the right inner circle or didn't have the access to right conversations. And this, we face at times in schools as well as kids. You'll find that a lot of teachers have students will come back and say, these five kids are teachers' pets. So similarly, in work environment also, you'll have these gatekeeper leaders who will say, I will only work with, I'll share my all my good things only with these two or three or four people. Now, I knew I wanted to lead very, very differently, not like this. I really believe in open doors, not closed ones. So I never have, closed cabins in any organization I've ever worked at. And if I've really learned something, I will share it with everybody. Because when you share it, it grows. If I can make a introduction or open an opportunity for my team, I will go ahead and do it. Now, some of the most rewarding moments in career have really come from helping people grow. Whether it's mentoring women into leadership or supporting someone to make a big career shift into sales, all of these have helped not just me feel good or this person grow in life, it has also helped the businesses grow, right? And another leadership style, which I think early on, which I didn't like, which I really rejected, was the cookie cutter mindset. When I started in tech many years back, I did not fit the mold of this industry. I come from a biology background. I'm an MBA in marketing. And I did not come when I joined work. I did not come from a top Ivy League college or from an engineering degree also. So when I joined a technology, big organization, I met with leaders who thought that I was not the right recipe for success. But here's what I know now, that there is no perfect background for success. Some of the best leaders come from unexpected paths. Not being an engineer did not stop me from excelling in tech. Not coming from a certain league of college, university did not limit my ability to lead the teams that I have led. It did not inhibit me from driving revenue or building the businesses. So that is why when I hire or when I mentor people, I look beyond I might at times fail, but I try to look beyond the traditional checklist that people have, because talent can come from anywhere and everywhere. So if you really ask me about anti-mentorship, I've had plenty, but sometimes I think knowing what not to do is just as valuable as knowing what to do in life and business.
That just made me awestruck, because I am a kind of person who tends to, and especially the cookie cutter one, because being in a mold, especially when you are in tech arena, means having a certain set of skills and maybe adapting to it eventually. And being in a earlier stage of my career, this really resonates a lot to me, and it just shifted my mindset towards how I approach my work and maybe how I approach my personal life as well.
Right.
And the biggest takeaway for me is that from now on, I'll make my own recipes. That I just feel really empowered. But at the hindsight, we also see that there are a lot of women in tech who feel, who go across certain type of self-doubt or systematic challenges. So what advice do you give to aspiring women in tech to reach leadership positions, but they feel held back or they have a certain kind of self-doubt or systematic challenge? So what advice do you give to them?
Aishwarya, this one really hits home, So many women today hold themselves back when, even before, they get the chance to go and make big. And a lot of it really starts even before we step into the workplace, right? Growing up, I think many of us subtly or at times, not even subtly, we are taught to make people comfortable as women. We are taught to give in. We are taught not to take up too much space, Be agreeable in whatever somebody is saying. Be likable, Don't be too aggressive, you're a girl. And if you succeed, make sure you don't seem to be too ambitious, because if you're too ambitious, you're not showing the typical girl-woman trait, right? And then after all of this, what we've gone through in our personal life, in childhood, in our youth, we enter into the corporate world. And suddenly we are in rooms where confidence is mistaken for competence. And self-doubt starts to creep in. And there is this word which I've learned over the years, which is so true, called as imposter syndrome, right? The imposter syndrome starts whispering into our ears. Do I really deserve this? Am I ready for this? Even, and I read Indra Nooyi's books a lot. Even Indra Nooyi, one of the most successful CEOs of our time, talked about how very early in her career, she hesitated to speak up in meetings filled with men until she realized that her ideas were just as good as the next person or next man sitting there, if not better. She learned to own her space, right? And that mindset helped her to transform PepsiCo. And she's a legend today. Look at Michelle Obama. Michelle Obama has, once I remember listening into her in one of the talks where she spoke about self-doubt, and she said, I still have a little imposter syndrome. It never goes away. and that you are actually listening to me, but it doesn't go away. So I remember these lines coming to my head, one of those podcasts or something I was listening about her. Now imagine a first lady, somebody as powerful as Michelle Obama, a Harvard educated lawyer, a global icon. She's still feeling that. But she did not let that imposter syndrome stop her in any way. Right? So this is what I have learned in my life, Aishwarya, that confidence is not about knowing everything. It is about trusting yourself to figure out as you move in life. No leader, and I can tell you, no leader has all the answers. The ones who move forward are the ones who back themselves up anyways, whether they know or not. They're like pat on the back and they say, okay, let's move forward and we learn on the way. And the second thing which I think I've learned with this subject is do not reject yourself. Do not self-reject. I've seen very brilliant women, and I've worked with many women, in my career. They hesitate to apply for roles or ask for promotions because they did not tick the, every single box when a JD comes out. And there is a, study which says that when a job position comes out and when a woman looks into it, unless the woman sees that she's 80% or 90% ticking all the boxes, she would not apply for the role. On the other hand, men, when they see it, even if it is 40%, they feel that, they comply to those ask of the JD, they will apply for it. So women start self-rejecting themselves very early on. So that's something which has to change. Then the other one which I think I will want to talk about is you don't need permission to take any space. Women today, most of them know, but a lot of them still feel that they need the permission to own the space. Now, when you are a leader, in leadership, it is not about waiting for an invitation. It is about stepping up. It is about stepping in with the belief that you belong here. No one is going to give you leadership position. You have to go and claim your own place, right? That's how you become a leader. And the fourth one, which I will still talk, is about entitlement. Entitlement is always looked out as a negative word. So I would say entitlement is not a bad word. It's funny how you would see men to be encouraged to feel entitled to success, while women are taught to be grateful for every opportunity they get. You are allowed to expect success. You are allowed to believe you belong in that room. And that is something as women, we need to remember, embrace, and always take care of. So yes, systematic challenges do exist. Biases also exist. But the biggest battle starts in our own heads and hearts. Now, sooner we can break those patterns, the sooner we will step into leadership. Not just for ourselves, but for the women who will be coming after us. So if you are hesitating, here's my advice to all of you young women who are listening to me. Apply for that job. Speak up in that meeting. Ask for that raise. Take up that space. You belong there. Own up that leadership space. It's for you.
I mean, that's a straight home run, because I'm pretty sure, irrespective of the gender, each one of us has gone through our fair share of imposter syndrome.
Yes.
Or each one of us must have felt overwhelmed sitting in a meeting room where there's 10 people sharing their ideas and you don't know how to speak up your idea. So, I mean, that's just heart touching. And I couldn't have thanked you more for sharing this, Anjali, because I'm pretty sure our audience is going to, this is one of those learnings which stays. And with that being said, throughout your answer, what I see is that there are three major factors which are at play here. One is technical expertise when you talked about JD. Then there's emotional intelligence when you talked about imposter syndrome. And also there's strategic thinking when you talked about, speaking up in a meeting or maybe applying for the JD as well. So,
Yeah.
with that being said, between these three technical expertise, emotional intelligence, and strategic thinking, which leadership quality has unexpectedly become more crucial at different stages of your career journey? And how has that realization changed how you developed your team?
Oh, that's a long question, and I'll take a pause to breathe and think about this before I start answering. If you would have asked me this in early part of my career when I started working, what mattered the most to me, I would have just hands down, I would have said technical expertise because I did not come from a technology background. I was a bio student, as I said, then I did my MBA in marketing. So, coming into tech without engineering background, I felt like I had to prove myself. I had to learn every product inside out, understand the architecture, speak the language of technology. And sure, I did that and that helped me build credibility with everybody. But over time, I realized that expertise alone doesn't make you a leader. And we're talking of leaders here, right? So that doesn't just make you a leader. And as I grew into my leadership positions, into my leadership journey, I had to really shift gears. Strategic thinking became the real game changer for me. It was no longer about doing my job well. It was about seeing the bigger picture, making bold bets and building my team through all this uncertainty of tech progress which has been happening. And that was a big mindset. That was a big mindset shift for me. Instead of solving the problems for my team, I started to coach them. I started to coach them to think ahead, to anticipate the challenges which they will face, and also to make their own decisions. So this is something which I have done, over years. I empower my teams to make their own decisions and be responsible for their own decisions. Now, the biggest surprise in all of this, I would say, was emotional intelligence. At some point in time, you realize that your success is no longer about what you know. It's about how well you understand and inspire the people along. Can you motivate a team? Can you navigate all those conflicts which arise out of, ever changing business needs and scenarios? Can you get buy-in for tough decisions that you want to make? And there are many tough decisions that you have to take in business as a business leader. Because even the best strategy, that you might have will not work for you if you don't have people aligned to your thought process and they are not excited about, that thought process of yours. So, that is how I develop my team now. Of course, I want them to be great at what they do, but I also want them to push, I want to push them and then say, step back, look at the room, understand the different perspective of the team members and learn to influence people without having that authority. Okay? Because in leadership, what you know and what you've learned over the years can get you into the door. But how you connect with people, that is what will keep you in that room. And that is what will help you grow in that role of yours. And, be a leader who's loved and be a leader who will make people grow with him or her.
Absolutely, Anjali. And this is such an interesting take, especially when you said that it's usually what happens is whenever we talk about leadership or nurturing a team, So instantly, unfortunately, the first word that strikes with leadership is authority.
Yeah.
And that's unlearning at its best. Because what you said is authority is not needed when you have your jigsaw puzzles, the right fit of your jigsaw puzzles right there. So that's a perfect alignment. And that alignment is what takes you towards the bigger journey and helps you look at the bigger picture. And with that being said, I can see that you're a kind of a person who likes to make a personal connect with each and every person you talk to. Because I know I feel connected to you after knowing you better. And that's where I think so. Networking comes into picture.
Okay.
Yeah. So in nowadays, networking plays a crucial role in career journeys.
Yeah.
So, what's your approach to building a meaningful connection that opens door for new opportunities?
I really love this take on networking because it's so much more. I think networking is so much more than fancy dinners, late nights, and closing deals over drinks. I come from a sales background, right? And early on in my life, a lot of people used to tell me that, if you're not networking, you'll not be successful. And I would ask, what is networking? And the answer I would get is go out for dinners, have some drinks, have a smoke, and that is going to help you network and close your deals. But I think networking is definitely not just that. For me, networking has a very different meaning. Networking for me is an all time, all levels game. It's not just about knowing the top decision makers. And I'm talking from a sales perspective, okay, because that's the experience I have the maximum. So it is not just about knowing the top decision makers, it's about connecting with everyone who plays a role in your success. As a sales leader, I always coach my teams to network beyond the boardroom, the security guard, right? When you go to sell somebody to a client, the security guard can really tell you which competitive person had come in before you. The receptionist, she or he knows who's in the office, who's in a good mood, and who's impossible to reach on Fridays. So don't reach on a Friday. The finance team, probably the IT guy, the executive assistant, they all play a part in the bigger picture. So a deal isn't just closed with one person, it is influenced by many. So that's a network you have to develop. And networking isn't just external, it's just as critical inside your own organization. Now, promotions, big projects, and even leadership opportunities, they are often decided, mind you, they're often decided when you are not in the room. And what gets you a seat at the table is your own personal brand. What people say about you when you are not around in that room. That's why I believe that staying visible, staying engaged, and building real relationships across all levels is the key to success. Now, each one of us has our own way of keeping our network alive, right? Now, for me, every single morning, without fail, I send a good morning message to some 500 people across the globe. Colleagues, customers, friends, relatives, family. And that's my daily ritual. These are the people who comprise that 500 plus people. Now, it keeps my relationships warm. It helps to keep my conversations flowing with them. And that reminds the people that I'm here, no matter how far I am, away from them. Because at the end of the day, I think I do believe that networking isn't about transactions. It's about relationships that you build and curated and nurtured. And the best ones, they just don't open opportunities, they create them. Those relationships help you to create those opportunities. So, I really hope that each of you who's listening here has some small way of making these relationships and nurturing these relationships. It could be any habit, but I'm sure each of you has one. If not, please develop one.
And I mean, that's such a strong take on networking because, especially many of us in my generation, for us, networking has been synonymous to LinkedIn. right? If you
Or
are
Insta.
able, or Instagram for that sake,
Yeah.
like if you're able to build a good social persona of yourself, that's a good networking skill which you have. But what we often forget is that it's the people behind those accounts that matter, and not the social media itself. And yeah, this takeaway is going to stay with me, and I'll definitely try to implement your WhatsApp broadcast group. And I hope to be part of that soon as well. So, with that being said, we'll transition into the fun part of this session. Oh, also, I see that our audience is curious to know your take on few of the questions. But
Oh, let me see. There were some questions coming in. I'll have to wear my glasses to read.
yes.
Okay.
So what we can do is you guys can send those questions over to me, and then I can connect. I can send those to Anjali, and then we can have a conversation over it subsequently. So with that, Anjali, we'll transition into our rapid fire round. And as I love to say that I would like the answers to be rapid and full of fire. So with that being said,
Are you going to give me the hamper?
ah,
You can't have rapid
I
fire.
can see there's a fellow Coffee with Karan console. I can't wait to have conversation around that with you.
Okay, no problem. Let's go ahead. Yeah.
And
I'm
we'll
excited
definitely
now.
send a hamper. I mean, you already
It's
deserve the
okay.
hamper. It's just
Don't ask me difficult questions, okay?
Yeah, absolutely not. So, with that, my first question to you is one book or a podcast that has influenced your leadership style.
Indra Nooyi's My Life in Full. I mean, that really, really deeply shaped my leadership style. Her relentless focus on preparation taught me that you just don't have to, show up, but you have to be ready when you show up. You have to prepare. So I think it's a must read for anybody who wants to lead with resilience and purpose.
Definitely. Check a new book in my read list. Okay, the second question is a tech trend that excites you the most right now.
There have been many. I attended this event called Synapse, which was by, I'm forgetting the person now, one of the journalists. I forget her name, but anyways, that's on my LinkedIn. And there they talked about something called as the concept of Uber model. That to me was very, very exciting. Now, for years, I think we've all been talking about AI replacing jobs.
Right.
But what's actually happening is very different. AI is augmenting human potential. It is creating what we can call as a Uber model. A person who is not just skilled, but supercharged by AI. So that's something which is really exciting me.
Wow, I mean, that's a new concept which I have come across, and I'll definitely research more about it.
Yeah.
So, with that, one piece of advice you wish you had received earlier in your career?
Something which I've truly believed in, but I think if had it come to me earlier, it would have helped. You yourself are the only person responsible for your own career. I used to think when I started working that hard work alone is going to take me ahead. But the truth is, there is nobody who's planning your next move for you. You have to speak up. You have to take your own risk. And you have to ensure that people see your impact. So don't wait for opportunities. Create them. Be responsible for your own, career.
That's such a good way of putting it. Okay, with that, coffee chats or conference networking, what do you
Coffee
prefer?
chat, any day. It's more personal, it is real, and this is where the best insights can be gained and magic really happens.
Absolutely. And as a fellow Coffee with Karan watchers, we understand its importance.
Yeah.
A habit or a routine that keeps you productive every day.
I think, as I said, my day, my morning, whichever part of the globe I'm in, starts with a good morning message to, those 500 plus people. I don't know, it's 1,000 now or whatever. And this good morning message is based on my experience I would have had the previous day, or some learning I would have had, or a story So that kickstarts my mind into some productive stuff, and that keeps me, productive the entire day.
Absolutely. And I mean, how I see that is that you start your day with a genuine connection. And what a better way to start your day than have a genuine connection to talk to, right?
Yeah.
With that, if you weren't in tech, what career would you have pursued?
A neurosurgeon.
Of course.
I've always wanted to play with the minds of people. Okay. I did
Ah.
biology. I wanted to be a neurosurgeon. Now I can't cut and whatever, do the minds. So I play with the minds and indulge in sales. So it's all about the mind.
Of course. And one word that defines your leadership style?
I think inclusive. I've been a very inclusive leader. I really believe that leadership for me is making sure that everybody has a voice, everybody has a seat on the table, and there is a real chance that I give to everybody to succeed. So I've been a very inclusive leader all throughout.
Absolutely. And that was visible throughout the session, Anjali, I must say. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to a rather really informative and intriguing With Purpose session. And we cannot thank you enough, Anjali, for sharing your insights with us. Trust me when I say this, your words resonate. And it just like goes straight to the heart. And I mean, this session is going to stay, and it's going to stay with me for long. And your words around imposter syndrome, and what I learned throughout the session is that it's not just the diversity that helps; it's also the personal connection which you make. And with that being said, it was a true honor to talk to you, Anjali. I cannot thank you enough for taking time out to talk with us and share your insights with our audience. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we end our session for the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Anjali.
much, Aishwarya and the team. It has been a pleasure to meet all of you and participate in this session. I really hope and wish that, the insights that I've been able to share owing to my personal experiences and journey can help some of you to, adopt those learnings and inculcate them in your growth. And do reach out for those questions. Do write them to me and I will be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anjali.